of Monday, September 8th. Ms. McKay, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Ramsey.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Here.
Ms. Kernscher.
Here.
Thank you. Leads us now into items for council's meeting of September 11th. Drew, you want to give us a preview?
Sure. So we have three public hearings. The first one is consideration of an easement for Dominion Energy on Moortown Road related to the York County Fire Station. Then we have two items that relate to implementing the state code revision for the planning director to review subdivisions and site plans. And then our monthly operating report will be economic development, talking about special event permits. Under new business, we will have a consideration and action regarding the project that you all have actually considered a couple times to do traffic signal synchronization on Richmond Road and Lafayette Street. Then we have two items related to EMS billing. The first is renewing the contract. The second is adding the additional fees that are due. Under D, we have the option to opt in to the most recent opioid-related claims with the state. And then we have implementation of a special event permit fee. And then the last item on the agenda is consideration of boards and commission appointments.
Sounds like an exciting meeting. Any questions for the city manager on those? Takes us now to public comments. We have one speaker's card, Ms. Frederica Tuet. Known you so long, and I'm sorry I messed your name up, but welcome to the podium. Toyota. Thank you. You'll just state the name and address for the record, please.
TOYTA is the way you can think of it.
Oh, thank you.
Hello, City Council members. I'm here to talk about restricted parking neighborhoods. And I'm going to first read you a letter that I submitted to the Virginia Gazette and was published on Saturday. And in case some of you didn't catch it, here it is. Williamsburg, the surveillance city. An article in the Daily Press and the Virginia Gazette in April, One Nation Under Watch. Williamsburg leads Hampton Roads in flock camera deployment rate. States that the rate per capita was more than 5 times the regional average. With installations near schools, since then, the number of these cameras recording the license plate of every car that goes by has certainly increased. Now the city has implemented a new digital system of recording every license plate in restricted parking neighborhoods. Not only residence plates, which is standard, but every visitor's license plate has to be submitted digitally to the city beforehand to avoid a ticket. Gone are the anonymous visitor permit hang tags. In their place is a system invading people's privacy. The city will have a database compiling who visits whom, when, and where. To assume this will be restricted to a single secure purpose is to ignore the current reality in which such information can be hacked, commandeered, or recovered for other purposes. Practically, this digital system replaces a simple procedure of face-to-face application with decals and tags for a complicated, time-consuming, I witness to that, process requiring computers and repeated logins, which can be beyond some people's abilities. Moreover, errors in recording plate numbers are sure to ensue. Some visitors are aides or workers with irregular visiting times. The ordinance exempting service vehicles does not take into account unmarked or unnoticed signs on cars. As a result, the new parking fine structure will certainly enable the city to reach its fiscal year 2026 goal of $125,000, more than 1.5 times last year's projected revenue from this source. The city needs to rethink this ill-conceived plan with regard to visitors for both its impracticality and its impingement on people's rights to privacy and freedom of association. I was going to ask you, what were you thinking? But then I found out that some of you didn't even know about this as the plan rolled out. So, city manager and staff, I ask you, what were you thinking? Apparently, you weren't. This was a peremptory and high-handed action taken without consultation or consideration of the consequences. Here is a set of questions that I think should have been asked. I charge you to take them back to your offices and your work sessions and to come up with workable solutions for allowing visitors into restricted parking neighborhoods without the unwieldy and invasive logins of each license plate parked in front of our houses. 1, an unexpected visitor drops by with a gift and comes in to chat. His car gets ticketed. Should I run upstairs to my computer, log on to the city parking website, manage neighborhood parking guest passes, oops, forgot to get the license plate number, back downstairs, back upstairs, and fill in the 17 steps to register my friend? 2, elderly or incapacitated residents can need multiple aids over the course of a day, a week, an indefinite amount of time. Alternate caretakers and delivery people arriving in different vehicles at different times. Is it reasonable to expect an elderly or impaired resident to keep a track of a variety of assistance cars? I appreciate that the website now promises accommodations for residents with special needs, but exactly what will that be? 3, residents absent for long periods during the year enlist various people to house mail and garden tend, who are not full-time service or delivery vendors. Their vehicles are unmarked and they arrive at irregular hours. How can an absentee owner keep track of all those people and log them in from afar? In all these cases, hang tags seem to me to be the optimal solution. The complaints that off-campus students abuse the hang tag system by using visitor passes is not a parking issue. It is an endemic problem concerning the violation of numbers of renters allowed in a unit exceeding the number. Parking passes, whether physical or digital, are never going to solve this. Finally, as I said in my letter, this impinges on both residents and their visitors' rights of privacy and freedom of association. And the dystopian world, my last sentence, we live in, no assurance from city officials will convince me that this data cannot be appropriated to purposes other than collecting parking fines and coercing students to self-limit their numbers in rental units. Thank you for your hearing.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I am going to submit this letter
Thank you.
to.
Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting, and we'll move on to background presentations. And first, we have a presentation regarding the Sports Williamsburg and Visit Williamsburg initiative. We have with us today Mr. Ed Harris. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm delighted to be here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
I think, okay, this is the clicker. So today I am going to talk about how our organization, the Williamsburg Tourism Council, better known as Visit Williamsburg, is helping with driving sports tourism here to the historic Triangle. And I'm going to structure my talk in a way where I'm going to talk about where we've been, where we are right now, and where we are headed. And so to kick things off, I want to talk a little bit about the trade show world that we are operating in. And we are very fortunate to have Morgan Cordell. I know she's not here today, but she is an outstanding employee at Visit Williamsburg, and she is handling the selling of our sports opportunities across the historic Triangle. And Morgan goes to several conferences and trade shows a year. She travels around the country. And at these trade shows, you will see lots and lots of destinations setting up booths, trying to attract tournament organizers to come by their booth, get more information, and hopefully choose that destination for their next big sports tournament. There's also speed dating type sessions where you sit down one-on-one with sports tournament organizers and you get about 5 to 7 minutes with them, and then someone else rotates to your table. So it's a really interesting setup. But we are starting to become a major player at those conferences now that we're inching closer to the opening of the Sports and Events Center. So I'm going to touch quickly on trade shows in terms of where we've been, and then I'm going to get into what we've been doing on the marketing side. And so from a trade show standpoint, back in April, Morgan attended the Sports ETA Summit, which was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She followed that up going to the Connect Marketplace Summit in Miami. And when we're talking about these trade show appointments, we're talking about not only having those one-on-one meetings and having a presence on the trade show floor, but we try to go beyond that. We try to wrangle attendees of that conference and get them off site so that we can get some one-on-one time with them. And a perfect example of that would be Miami at the Connect Marketplace Summit, where Morgan was able to get 30 sports rights holders. And when we say sports rights holders, that's the same as a sports tournament group looking for a home for their tournament. And we were able to get them off-site with Visit Williamsburg for a night of answering questions and just entertainment. And those relationships go a long way. If anybody here has ever had a sales position, I think you would agree that relationships are critical. And so in addition to attending these conferences, we're also getting some great one-on-one time to build those relationships while we're at those conferences. And so shifting gears in terms of marketing and marketing development, we're working with a Virginia-based agency called White 64. They're based up in the DC area. And when they initially talked with us, they wanted to do a brainstorm session around what words do we want your sports offering to be associated with. And you can see those words there on the screen. We landed on confident, competitive, bold, energetic, motivational, and assuring. And from those words came some design elements that we must have gone through 30 different logos and branding options with our sports advisory committee, which I'll share with you here in a minute. And then we looked at just the platform. What do we want our sports marketing to talk about? And so as you can see here, we went with this concept of the win. And I'll just read it in case you can't see it where you're sitting. The win includes images for the W, which should capture the moments leading up to the go-ahead point, the game-winning goal, or the final play. They can also show the moments after the W, the big cheer, the team hug, the screams of victory. And we like their recommendation to emphasize the W in the sense that it translates to winning, but also Williamsburg. And so you can see here some of the photography and how that works with this mantra of for the W and how it will play out in different executions from a marketing tactic standpoint, whether that's banners, could be signs greeting these tournaments, could even be in a hashtag scenario. And so I'm clicking through these quickly just because there will be a lot of different tactics that we'll use this For the W platform in. We're also working on apparel, water bottles, all the types of things that sports enthusiasts like to get. And then there's the website. The website recently launched, and we're really happy with it. There's lots of new photography on the Sports Williamsburg website, which you can access through visitwilliamsburg.com. We have some print advertising that's going to be hitting in the next couple of months that features some action shots, some renderings of the sports facility, and it's a good mix of the assets that we want to share. And then, of course, you have to have digital marketing in the year of 2025, and we've partnered with a company called Epsilon. Epsilon is one of the leading digital marketing vendors that destination marketing organizations across the country partner with. And what they're going to do for us is they're going to get this creative in front of as many people as possible, initially within a 50-mile radius of here. And so the last thing that I want to mention on the marketing front is the agency we're working with developed a sizzle reel to kind of highlight the opportunity here in Williamsburg that we can send to sports rights holders and tournament organizers across the country to get them inspired to want to choose Williamsburg over so many other options. And I just want to reiterate that, like sports themselves, winning business in the sports world and getting these big tournaments to choose Williamsburg over so many options is extremely competitive. And I'll get into a little bit of how we do that in a minute. But for now, I am going to kick off this video. Hopefully it's queued up and we'll run. And I think, you know, we had a couple different revisions of this video, but I feel like we landed on a piece that really gets at the essence of what this historic triangle has to offer.
Imagine the most inspiring sports destination you can. Is it across the street from a fulfillment center, somewhere between a cornfield and a data farm? Is it crammed downtown between $600 hotel rooms and $60 parking? Or is it somewhere more epic? Along shores dotted with stories of success and setback, near fields renowned for overcoming odds and overthrowing empires. A place where hope and adversity were forged into sheer force of will. Now that place sounds legendary. That place sounds like Williamsburg. Undefeated since 1781, the historic triangle knows what it takes to get the W, on and off the field. Just 150 miles from D.C., midway between Richmond and Virginia Beach, and nearby no less than 3 airports and a train station. The path to victory couldn't be clearer. If you've got the game, we've got the courts, the courses, the diamonds, the pools, the trails, the rivers, and the pitches to play them on. And while we're not partial to monarchs, we do have a crown jewel too. A 200,000 square foot state-of-the-art sports and events center coming in 2026, which will take our game and any game to the next level. But don't expect the pace and the passion to stop after the whistle blows. In Williamsburg, there are countless ways to keep your heart racing. There are hundreds of acres of thrilling theme parks, momentous historic sites, and untouched nature to burn off all that excess adrenaline. And when you need to recharge, our eclectic food scene knows how to feed a frenzy, with every kind of venue imaginable for victors to claim their spoils, and the vanquished to drown their sorrows. Then, when the competition is finally put to bed, there's over 7,000 sleeping rooms of all shapes, sizes, price points, and amenities ready and waiting. So when you're looking for that ideal destination for your next event, remember, you're looking for more than just a place, but a headspace. A location with bleeding-edge facilities and historic hustle. Amenities that amp athletes up. Dining that delivers. Hotels that are lights out. You're looking for Williamsburg.
Okay, so that video, again, will be used as a tool to follow up with the people we're meeting with around the country at these conferences. And I've been working with creative and public relations firms for over 20 years. And all of these videos start out in a Word document or a whiteboard with lots of brainstorming and ideas, and then you give it over to the agency and you hope that they achieve what you're thinking in your head. And this is one of those few examples where in a relatively short amount of time, this agency took all of those ingredients and delivered something that I think we're really proud of as Visit Williamsburg and the whole sports scene here in the historic triangle. So we'll be showing pieces of that video too on social media, but really happy with how that turned out. And then in terms of where are we right now, so all of that marketing development has already happened. We've been going to trade shows. There are some future trade shows I'll talk about in a minute, but I do want to quickly talk about some highlights from the agreements that we are signing either at these conferences or as a follow-up to these conferences. One of them includes Phenom Hoops, based out of North Carolina. They run boys basketball tournaments, and I know some of you have heard me say this before, but they produce what we refer to as mega tournaments. They will bring in over 100 teams to compete over a weekend. They will start games at 8 a.m. on a Friday. They'll go to about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and they'll do that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Those 100 teams and families and coaches and referees, they all need places to stay overnight, places to eat, things to do, and maybe even add on to their trip. So the economic impact is very significant. In fact, when we talk about youth sports business and the total economic impact on an annual basis in the United States, when you think about everything from registrations, uniforms, coaches, travel, all those expenses, we're talking about a $50 billion annual business here. And we are going to be a key player in that world very soon. But you can see there's a variety of sports that are already booking our new center before it's even opened. We have some volleyball tournaments, fast pitch. There's actually quite a list of commitments that we've made with these rights holders around the country who will be coming here. And I do want to point out that this list here is not just for the new sports facility. These tournaments will be hosted here in the Historic Triangle at outdoor venues as well. But it's important to note that almost 90,000 hotel room nights are already secured in the future. And I know there's still lots of opportunity to look at potential new hotel construction here in the Historic Triangle, as well as group dining options is another opportunity for the right developers as it relates to the sports business we see coming very soon. And some of these agreements are multi-year commitments. Many of them have chosen to wait to begin competing here until the first quarter of 2027 because they wanted to just wait a little while, let the sports facility get up and running before they bring in a giant tournament. But we are very active in this space, and I'm not going to pretend like there isn't a cost and that there isn't any negotiating for every single one of these line items on the screen. There is a lot of back and forth. These tournaments can go anywhere, but we have an incentive plan that's based on the number of room nights they're going to bring, and we are very competitive in that space, and we plan to continue to do so. We're also very fortunate to have a group of all-stars on our sports advisory committee. Two of them are in the room today. I know Dana and Robbie are here, and I think that's anybody else that's here on our sports advisory? I don't think so. But we meet every couple months, and we talk about who are those tournaments that are coming in, what are some opportunities we could go after, what are some challenges that maybe some of our Parks and Recs friends are working through. And so it's a really important meeting. We will have another meeting coming up in November. And then the last piece of my talk today will be a little bit about where we're headed. Again, we continue to go to the trade shows throughout the year. There's actually a conference called the Sports Relationship Conference coming up in Columbia, South Carolina, followed by the annual Teams Conference, which will happen in Columbus this year. We'll have a presence at both of those. Oftentimes, our friends at Kemper will also join us there to help sell the sports facility. And one add-on we have at the Sports Relationship Conference is a sponsored luncheon. What that does, it gives us added presence and added spotlight, if you will, when they're at these giant convention halls having lunch. And then at the Teams Conference, we will be part of a golf tournament that's associated with the conference. And so to wrap up, when we're talking about these stakeholders and what we're trying to do at these various trade shows throughout the country, we're trying to maximize our investment in attending those. obviously trying to strengthen the pipeline of business from being there, and then making sure that these tournaments see that we are engaged, we're proactive, we're visible, and ultimately, for an organization like Visit Williamsburg, it's all about heads and beds. And so driving those room nights and the long-term economic impact. And then I'll wrap up just by talking a second about the future. As I said, we have a superstar on our staff in Morgan Cordell. We are going to be adding some people around her. We currently have an intern that started last week, actually. We'll be adding a sports sales specialist. That position is currently posted. And then by the end of this year, hopefully we'll have additional sales support for Morgan. So that position will be posted as well. So we are building out the team as the clock is ticking, and we're getting closer and closer to the opening of our exciting Sports and Events Center. And with that, I guess I'll open it up to any questions you have.
Well, Mr. Harris, thank you for being here. As many of you know, I serve as the treasurer of Visit Williamsburg, and so I have the pleasure of meeting with Ed routinely to talk about all things Visit Williamsburg, and obviously sports is a big part of what we talk about. And you know, I've got to say that video is probably one of the best pieces we have produced in 30 years from a promotional perspective. I mean, it's powerful. I mean, it makes you want to stay in Williamsburg. And so I'm really excited about this. And I guess, you know, the sports, we've had sports tourism in Williamsburg for a long time, but the sports center really is kind of the keystone that's brought it all together, because what Morgan is out selling is not just the sports center. It's what's happening out at the War Hill complex and at Quarterpath Park, and just, you know, wrapping all of the assets that the tri-community has to bring sports here. And it's an impressive amount of money that's being spent on sports tourism. So a question, and maybe speak to it. So if a team comes, we have so many other assets. And when we did our feasibility studies, you know, that was one of the keys there was, you know, they would go to Busch Gardens or Colonial Williamsburg. But if they don't do it during their tournament, I think having people come to Williamsburg for sports will introduce them to Williamsburg in a way that they may be unfamiliar with. It's not their father's Oldsmobile anymore, and it's different than when you were here in the 8th grade. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great point, Mayor Pons. Most of the feedback we get back when we're trying to close these individual deals with these tournaments is they're blown away by the wide variety of things to do that are close by, unlike many of the competing sports facilities, not just in Virginia, but beyond. The other thing we hear quite a bit about more recently is they want to divert tournaments here in part because of the safety and the safety perception of this whole area of the historic triangle. And that's a big deal for families who are traveling to multiple tournaments in the summer or throughout the year. They want to go to a place where their family's going to feel safe and have lots of things to do. And so you mentioned Busch Gardens and, you know, Water Country, Great Wolf Lodge.
Colonial Williamsburg, got to say that.
Sure, Colonial Williamsburg. I mean, we have a huge list of just awesome experiences for a family coming into town for these tournaments, and that definitely gives us an advantage at the negotiating table.
My last question before I turn it over to the Vice Mayor. You had mentioned that while we have seen bookings at the Sports Center, which is not going to open until mid-year 26, you're seeing tournaments planners are waiting to have it open before they start booking. And that really, I think, only makes sense. They don't want to book a tournament too soon and then have a construction delay. Do you anticipate that there will be a great number of bookings once it's open? And now we have Ms. Yost here organizing the HTRFA. Do you see it kind of opening up, so to speak?
Absolutely. I think, you know, the long-term strategy is to continue to make sure we're booking tournaments years out. That's how that world operates. especially the larger tournaments. They want to not only book years in advance, they are very interested in multi-year commitments because it's a lot of work on their end to send out information every year to say, we're going to go to a different place this year, and it's a whole new experience. And so they like to lock in, many of them, in multi-year deals. So yes, we're being aggressive in terms of just long-term tournaments. One of the groups is booked through 2029. And to kind of speak to your first point, in the early going, when we open in, say, July or August, leading up to that first quarter of 2027, we will be working with Dana and Kemper and the team to develop some fun experiences in the center for our local community. There's been some interesting ideas tossed around already about an indoor pickleball tournament. And there's endless opportunities. I'm sure other people have presented on the various sports that can happen inside the center, but we'll be working as a team to make sure there's a good amount of activity happening in there from when the doors open.
Good, thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Harris, for the presentation, and as you indicated, it's timely as we move closer to the opening of the sports center. And I agree with the mayor. I mean, I don't think you could have any more powerful video than what you've shown today to bring that focus to Williamsburg and bring that interest here to get those tournaments here. Thank you and your staff for all the great work that's been done thus far. And I don't want to focus on the negative, but during conversations, is there a topic that surfaces that is a negative for Williamsburg that a big tournament would not book here? And the reason I ask that is that something as a council we need to be looking at in the future to make sure that we keep bringing those tournaments back year after year after year.
Yes, I would say, and I don't know that I would call this a negative, many of them are hesitant to book before being inside it and seeing visually how their tournament's going to show up and be executed. So that's one reason some of the tournaments are not booking with us yet. Occasionally we do hear a lot of questions around group dining options. We also hear that occasionally from school groups who wish we had more of that. So that's certainly a long-term opportunity to have spaces that can accommodate several teams who are, finished or wrapped up playing over the 12 courts that we have over at the center. So I think for the right business person or entrepreneur, that's
Like a
great opportunity.
cafeteria-style restaurant type thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. That's all the questions I have. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Chair?
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. This was really great, and yeah, the video was fabulous, and I admit that sometimes I can look askance at like branding and PR, and I'm like, really, how good is that? I was like, this is actually really good. This is great, and I have to say too that the even the branding with like the For the W and turn your tournament into a tradition. I mean, these are all like just so well done, and so I commend everyone who has been involved in doing this, because I think it really does capture our community really well and what we're trying to achieve. So I actually don't think I have any questions. I was, because they've been addressed, I was thinking about the multi-year commitment, and you sort of addressed that. Like when you're talking about multi-year commitment, how many years is like the average when you have
It's
one of these?
typically 3 years.
3 years, okay. And I could see why. I was thinking about like, well, why would a place do that? But I can see now it's because you don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every year for that. And then with respect to the group dining options, yeah, and then the mayor asked what I was thinking. So I think that my questions have been answered such as I had them, because you've provided us with a lot of information here and really things that I did not know before. And so I appreciate your time and everything that you and your team have been doing.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Ramsey?
Thank you for the presentation. This is the second time I've seen it and the video in just a few days since you were at NCW on Saturday. And today I was just as excited about seeing the video as I was then. As everyone else has said, I think it's very powerful and presents Williamsburg in a sort of a combination way that we don't see usually. You know, usually it's targeted to one aspect or one asset, not all of them together. So it was really good. I do have a couple questions based on some of the other questions that have been asked. So when you talk about challenges and people not wanting to book until they have seen the site, would you ever do like fam trips of when people or influencers come here towards the end of construction, they'll get like a sneak peek before it's open?
Yes, we had a successful one in the spring, actually, where we had, I can't remember, it may have been up to 20 rights holders, tournament organizers that came into Williamsburg for, I think, 3 or 4 days, toured the area. I think they even had a hard hat tour. So those do produce business, and you know, they're not cheap because we typically pay for their travel, but we are going to organize more of those going forward because, again, we're getting their one-on-one attention, and it's much better to have them here than showing them images at a trade show. But yes, FAM trips, familiarization tours, they're critical.
And when we talk about people coming in, are most of them planning on driving here, flying here? I doubt many will take the train. And if they're going to fly, have there been concerns or complaints basically with us not being a nonstop destination from a lot of locations?
Yeah, I think many of them will fly in because these types of tournaments, like the Phenom group, the boys basketball group, they're also having talent play in front of Division I recruiters, Division II, Division III, and these tournaments bring teams in from all over the country. And I'll be honest, we haven't had the experience yet to see what that experience is going to be like for them. But we're, willing to help coordinate, shuttle services from the airport, make it as easy for them as we can. But yeah, a good amount of them will fly, but there'll be quite a few people driving in as well. But all of these tournaments are multi-day tournaments, which is good for our hotels.
Yeah, I remember Mark Barham, he was flying to Atlanta and Orlando and Colorado for his daughter playing volleyball. And when we had the good fortune of being able to tour the facility a week or so ago, and one of the things that really sort of surprised me is how wide the sports and events can be. I mean, I know we've got volleyball and pickleball and basketball, but I've heard there's inquiries for wrestling, cheerleading, all other things. But I think the one that surprised me was needing to have a big door for a boat show. And I think we tend to forget that this is also an event center. And so can you speak to that just a little bit as to what the approach might be, or sort of how that might help bring people in on weekdays as opposed to all weekends?
It's a great question, Barbara. If you look at Visit Williamsburg's business, so to speak, we measure our performance on several things, but one of them is the transient tax that's collected. And the transient tax is paid by guests who stay overnight, whether they stay at a hotel, a campground, a B&B, an Airbnb, a timeshare. They pay a tax. And so we kind of see how we're doing as it relates to the tax collections. And we can dig in even further and see how much are our hotels filled up during the week versus the weekend. And day by day, we can look at the occupancy levels, and historically, what continues in terms of the results. We have a very strong leisure weekend business. Friday and Saturday night, our occupancy levels at our hotels are as high as or higher than most of the places you can visit in Virginia. When we get to Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night, we certainly soften in terms of the data. The occupancy percentage drops close to 20 points in some seasons. And so, to your point, if we can complement all the sports activity that's happening there with occasional trade shows, you said a boat show, could be an arts and crafts show, you name it, anything under the sun really that can fit inside our 200,000 square feet of space, we are now just trying to develop some renderings on how that space could be leveraged by non-sports groups. And the non-sports groups, they want to see how many table rounds can you fit in the space? Can you bring in a stage? How can you bring in additional lighting? And a laundry list of other things that they would need to rent to pull off a non-sports event. But that opportunity, the non-sports piece during the week, an event that could come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and bring in people who are going to stay overnight and attend that event or conference or trade show, will be huge for us, because we do have a significant drop-off when it comes to our hotel's business from weekends to weekdays.
Well, obviously, the main emphasis is on sports, as it well should be. That's where so much money is and so much travel and everything. But I did want to mention that, hearing about the big door for boat access was like, yeah, we can't forget that it's also an event center and has so many other potential capabilities. So
Yeah, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to develop sales tools for our non-sports sales staff to leverage. And it's tricky because there's so many different types of non-sports events. How do you narrow down what that brochure should show? And that's kind of what we're working through right now.
thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Harris, for the presentation. And I wanted to take a moment, too, just to applaud you and your team for just the success that we've had at the trade shows, and also the marketing looks amazing as well. One thing that really stood out to me that you said is not just, this doesn't just place us on the map, per se nationally, but also the local approach. I think the pickleball tournament sounds amazing to incorporate as well. I had a couple questions. The first being in regards to marketing, digital marketing. On our digital platforms, what are some of the key demographics that we're reaching out to? Is it primarily reaching out to sports leagues, or are families included as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, because ultimately our marketing strategy is intended to connect with the decision maker. Yes, we certainly want our families to want to come here and compete from around the country, but it's really the decision maker. And so through Epsilon, the digital company, they have a database of sports tournament organizers. And so we'll definitely be leveraging that so that we're not wasting investment on advertising that's going to be seen by the non-target audience. So it's a blend of both, but the bulk of it is really hyper-targeted at decision makers.
I guess going off of that, shifting a little bit in our conversation, how is sports tourism slated to increase just in general the next couple of years?
Well, they say that youth sports business is recession-proof, so that's good. I do not have any numbers with me today on the projections for the industry, but it's been growing year over year, had a slight dip during the pandemic, although golf sort of re-energized itself as a sport during the pandemic. But that's probably data I could get from our team on, what are the projections. But it is big business, and we are not the only player in the state of Virginia, and it will be competitive. And the good news is that our sales team's very competitive too. And so far so good. We're really happy to see the list of and the variety of tournaments on the books already with agreements over the next 3 years.
I think that's very exciting to have so many bookings already on the calendar. Going off of that, so I know a lot of the bookings start in 2027. Are there any plans for when it opens for our 250th, like any events around that?
Yes, well, there is a committee that's being formed as we speak to pull together a major grand opening of the facility. Not knowing exactly when it's going to open, is it going to coincide with 4th of July, Independence Day, those types of things, we don't know yet. But there will be a committee that will be putting something exciting together for when those doors open.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Appreciate you coming in, and hopefully we have you back soon to give us the latest update on all the positive things that are happening.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, takes us now to item B, which is a presentation regarding the Hampton Roads Alliance and the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facilities Authority. Today we have Steve Harrington with us.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pons, members of City Council. With us today is Steve Harrison, Chief Operating Officer of the Hampton Roads Alliance. The Alliance is a regional economic development organization representing 15 member localities, including the city of Williamsburg. Mr. Harrison is here today to share an overview of the Alliance as well as the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facilities Authority, or EVRIFA, for which the Alliance provides administration and management services. So with that, I will hand it over.
As he approaches the podium, I'll just remind the audience that the chair of EVRIFA is Ms. Ramsey, and so we're proud to be able to have her in that spot, so thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mayor Pons, and good afternoon, and absolutely, Barbara Ramsey, council member of Williamsburg, is the chair of the EVRIFA, and we're thrilled to have her leading that organization. And I think, we talk about it a lot, and that could be one of the most impactful regional groups, I think, moving forward. And so with the ideas that she's brought to the table, and I think the things that we're seeing coming down the pike, it will be pretty amazing in the years to come. So I'm Steve Harrison, the Chief Operating Officer at the Hampton Roads Alliance, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to learn a little bit about what's going on in regional economic development. And so I just want to run you through sort of 3 updates. One, just a reminder of the Alliance and who we are and sort of what we do. And then to talk a little bit more about our Hampton Roads Playbook, which hopefully you've seen and are familiar with the October 29th event that we're going to have, where we're officially launching it. Essentially what the playbook is sort of taking an offensive view of economic development. Instead of waiting for projects to come to us, we are diving deep into economic strengths and weaknesses and building projects sort of from the ground up based on what our local economy is sort of all centered around. And then to conclude, talking about the EVRIFA and the opportunities that we see there, and to talk about sort of Williamsburg's role across all 3 of those facets of regional economic development, and to take any questions and just to learn more about sort of where you all see Williamsburg fitting into these 3 criteria. So first, just as a brief reminder, the Hampton Roads Alliance, we are the regional economic development entity. We represent 15 jurisdictions, so we go from Virginia Beach out to Southampton County and then to New Kent County. So we're slightly actually outside of the boundaries of Hampton Roads proper, but this is really 15 communities that have a lot in common and really have a shared sense of values when it comes to economic development and sort of prosperity growth for all the citizens of those various communities. And we have about 100 private sector investors at varying tiers that work with us as well to help us understand the assets of the local economy and then to market this as a wonderful place to do business. So we essentially serve as a single point of contact for companies looking to come to Hampton Roads or companies who are already here and looking to stay and hopefully grow. And those are focused around business attraction, retention and expansion, which is really where the heart of economic development is. 80% of job growth essentially comes from existing business growth, so it's critical. Business intelligence, which that really is research. We try to answer any question that any business has about Hampton Roads, and if an answer can't be found, we will work with various stakeholders and put that answer together for them. And then real estate solutions is sort of the newest leg of our stool. EVRIFA is the centerpiece of that, but the #1 one reason Virginia has lost major projects in the last 15 years is we did not have business-ready sites. And so we've got to have business-ready sites, we've got to have available buildings to get projects. And there have been a huge rise in mega projects, and so these, not hundreds of millions, but billions of dollars in investment. And for Virginia, and in particular for Hampton Roads, to get our hands on a few of those, we really have to tackle real estate first. The Alliance's goals are basically in three main buckets. First is to build a world-class regional economic development ecosystem. And I think if you look at regional economic development historically, it's been a little bit of a sort of cast a wide net and hope to capture a few project wins. I call it a mile wide and an inch deep, where essentially we would go out, market Hampton Roads sort of generically, and try to attract any kind of company and then fit them in. This is really understanding the existing business community that exists here and then building on top of our collective strengths. And so it's a much more sort of academic, studied version of economic development where you're really looking at what is the competitive advantage that would make a company in certain industries want to locate here or need to locate here. Is it the supply chain? Is it the tax structure? Is it the workforce? And so that is sort of the main part of what we do, as well as investing in our sites, as I just mentioned. That's the major reason we're losing projects, and our people. If there's a secondary component that can make or break a deal, it's the workforce. And so we want to not only recruit a talented workforce here, but we want to retain the workforce that exists. We want to retain the graduates of William & Mary in the Hampton Roads region, and connect them with job opportunities. And then we've got to strengthen our region's resiliency. Energy is an amazing opportunity for economic growth, but it's also a potential threat to continued growth if we don't get our hands wrapped around the exponential increase in energy needs that we're seeing come down, particularly from data centers and the rise of AI and things like that, where the amount of energy that will be needed in Virginia in the next 10 years is 50% or more higher than it is right now. And so you really have to look at sort of all of the above energy policy to grow, not only grow our existing businesses, but to attract new alongside them. And so those target industries that I mentioned, I call them DEAL. So it's defense, energy, aerospace, and logistics. That's sort of the heart of the Hampton Roads economy, is those four industries. But they pair nicely with, and I think also you'll see there's a huge collection of companies in advanced manufacturing, in business and shared services, in food and beverage processing, and then in information technology. And the results so far year to date have been very good. We've supported 14 announcements, about 1,700 jobs created, and nearly $400 million in capital expenditures. And just to put that in context, so we really shifted to this model of economic development in 2020. And the results have, I think, spoken for themselves. If you look at the 2020 to 2024 period, that 5-year period, we quadrupled the capital investment that the Hampton Roads Alliance announced in the previous 10 years. And the jobs are similar. So in the 5-year period beginning in 2020, we announced 7,060 jobs, which was more than the 6,000 jobs announced in the 10-year period prior. And that trajectory is continuing in 2025. And so we are very confident that this strategy is working, and the results are showing that. And which takes us to sort of what do we do and how do we gather as an economic development community to meet this particular moment? And that is where the Hampton Roads Playbook comes in. And we're working alongside an urban economist and a Drexel University fellow named Bruce Katz. And he has sort of helped us to understand the change in the economy, in the global economy, since COVID. And that has really been driven by global tensions, these various wars and security risks, technological innovation, the need for increased energy. I think COVID changed the way that the world worked. And so then with it, economic development has to change as well. And this year in particular, we've seen a lot of federal changes, all of which are really leading America and the American economy to need to remilitarize, to reshore. I think we saw a lot of that during the COVID pandemic, that our supply chain disruptions could have been avoided if we had more onshoring of manufacturers, and then re-energizing or essentially looking at additional forms of energy and increasing our ability to create our own energy here in Virginia. And all of that leads to the need, essentially, to create a playbook, to create a strategy for how we can sort of meet this moment. And I think Hampton Roads is uniquely qualified to meet the moment. And so that's really where we started, which is what makes Hampton Roads unique. And I think if you ask sort of anyone that you might meet, what is the defining feature of Hampton Roads? I think a lot of people would say the military or federal spending. And so what we did was looked at federal spending from a regional perspective, and Hampton Roads punches well above its weight in federal spending. So we're the 37th largest metro area, but we are the 5th largest metro for DoD spending. And so that puts us in the company of major metropolitan areas like Dallas, Washington, D.C., New York, Boston. And I think a lot of people would also operate under the assumption that most of that spending probably is in Norfolk. But we found that not only is it not only Navy, about 53% of that spending is from the Navy, but that it is fairly spread throughout the region. So 31% is actually in Virginia Beach, 28% is in Newport News, 22% in Norfolk. And so defense contractors, the military really works sort of across this region. And so our goal is to strengthen that and to learn more about opportunities with the changing needs of the defense community, especially as you've seen there's a buildup in the need to sort of protect the Indo-Pacific, looking at the AUKUS agreement and things like that. And so how to get our fair share of what is a pretty large pie. But the other industries in the sort of deal target sectors are also seeing rapid momentum. So the energy side, of course, we've seen the offshore wind projects really come to fruition in these last few years. And so there's billions of dollars that can be invested in those projects. But I think even besides that, the Hampton Roads is the home of the greatest concentration of small modular nuclear reactors because of the aircraft carriers and things that are built by Huntington Ingalls. And so small modular nuclear reactors will be an additional form of energy that America will increasingly rely on, we believe, in the coming decades. And so we have a workforce here that could build those, could innovate, and could work alongside our universities to create newer forms of energy that are both carbon-free and a little bit more efficient, just to lead us into this sort of AI-driven future. Aerospace is also a huge growing industry, in particular looking at uncrewed systems beyond visual line of sight and advanced air mobility. And some of the work that's done at NASA Langley and at the National Institute of Aerospace, which is in conjunction with all of the local universities, William & Mary and others, it's pretty remarkable what they are doing there. And so what we want to do is work alongside NASA Langley in particular more closely and sort of get some of that research out from behind the gates and into the commercial sector. So for instance, they've done something where essentially they're mapping out drones or sort of Uber taxi drones that would be sort of sky drones. And so they've mapped out Manhattan and looked at, so what would that look like if you have 5,000 Uber taxis flying through Manhattan? And I mean, that's something that's being designed here in Hampton Roads. And so how do we keep that so that once NASA Langley's done with it, it goes to a Hampton Roads company to continue that R&D? And then logistics, I think the heart of so much of our local economic growth is the Port of Virginia. 1 in 10 jobs in Virginia are tied to the port, and they continue to see record-breaking volumes, record growth. $1.4 billion has been allocated to expand the port, and so we see just brighter things ahead for our work alongside the folks in the maritime industry. And one of the other things I think that is interesting about Hampton Roads is people kind of consider it to be a more spread out region. We're the largest metro area in America that is not concentrated around one core city. But what that actually does, and what we've sort of dubbed it, is creates a constellation of innovation throughout this region. And so the peninsula, I would argue, led by William & Mary, I'm an alum, so I'm a little bit biased, but an R1 research university, but there's also the Tech Research Center, Jefferson Lab, NASA Langley, Christopher Newport, the Virginia Peninsula Community College, Hampton University. There's incredible amounts of research that are being done on the peninsula and that can really bring in additional business to work alongside it. I think if you look at the high-performance data facility coming to Jefferson Lab, that gives us the opportunity to get into the AI space. But it's not exclusive to the peninsula. There's a lot of innovation taking place in the Norfolk and Virginia Beach corridor, particularly around advanced air mobility and data science at ODU and DroneUp. There's a lot of manufacturing and transportation logistics taking place sort of in the western part of the south side. And then, of course, the Hampton Roads themselves, the waterways, the maritime and defense hub that is in Norfolk, Portsmouth, Hampton, Newport News will continue, I think, to pay dividends as you see Huntington Ingalls working alongside Australian companies, UK companies to guard the Indo-Pacific and then to just ramp up our capabilities. And so that really leads us to what do we take from our constellation of innovations and use as a matrix, if you will, to create projects. And so that's where you find that the deal. So the projects that we will create in the playbook have to be within sort of these criteria. So they need to be supporting the defense, energy, aerospace, or logistics industries, and they need to be working to build sort of catalysts of those industries. And so that would be the workforce, technological innovation, industrial infrastructure, by which I mostly mean sites, and the supply chain. And I think an interesting part of the supply chain is the fact that Hampton Roads historically has only participated at the end of the supply chain. So, you know, we build tough tech, we build large vessels, we build aircraft carriers and a variety of things, whether it's Liebherr or HII, but we have not historically played a huge role in innovation, R&D, at the sort of beginning of the supply chain. So we want, throughout all of these projects, to enhance Hampton Roads' role, in particular pulling in our graduates from universities and things like that, and getting them to work alongside the Navy and you know, the Yorktown Naval Weapons Station and places like that to enhance our role downstream in the supply chain. And so the 6 initial strategic projects, and this will continue to evolve, and actually we have a 7th that's probably going to come online before the October 29th event, but are here as follows. The Defense Efficiency and Production Center is really a public-private center that is going to be focused on dealing with production delays, workforce shortages, a shrinking supplier network, and we believe a lot of that's going to concentrate around the need to enhance the welding workforce. And there have been a lot of discussions with industrial manufacturers about just the need for more welders. The second is an AUKUS Center of Excellence. AUKUS, if you're not familiar, is the Australia, UK, US trilateral agreement, which is to support the 3 countries' sort of collective defense, and then really preparing Australia to help guard the Indo-Pacific. And this one in particular, I think is of interest to you all here in Williamsburg. So each of these comes with sort of a white paper, which is a value proposition for why this project was chosen. So this AUKUS Center of Excellence white paper is co-written by William and Mary. Kay Floyd, who is the head of the Whole of Government Center of Excellence, is the co-author of this document, and it will be our goal for it to be in collaboration with, if not at, William and Mary. And so the hope then would be that these AUKUS Centers of Excellence would host international summits, and so they would take turns. And so the goal will be to host the first AUKUS Center of Excellence Summit in Hampton Roads, hopefully here in Williamsburg next year. Nexus is something that has been sort of going around the region. Really, it's just the need for advanced air mobility collaboration across these various assets. We have major aviation assets that are sort of disparate and not working together. And so whether that's the 2 commercial airports or all the various private airports, in addition to things like NASA Langley, DroneUp. And so we're really working to create an innovation hub where these industries can kind of come together and grow. The Ambassador Corps is looking at the incredible veteran population that we have here in Hampton Roads and really asking them to engage with us and to help us attract companies that they have either had interactions with or they have expertise in. So Admiral Chip Rock is actually going to to chair this ambassador corps. And we've had quite a few defense prospects, I would say, in the last 2 years, and we've had Admiral Rock come into some of those meetings, and it changes the entire conversation. Because instead of them talking to us, economic developers, they're talking to a colleague, a friend, someone that they trust and likely worked with or potentially worked for. And so we want to sort of on a larger scale, because we think that as these defense companies continue to look at Hampton Roads, we have a lot of sort of homegrown talent that we could tap in. And likewise, the 757 Collab Defense Technology Accelerator is basically looking at what's the next generation of defense contractors and how can we work with our various startup agencies to help them propel and then actually get contracts with the government. And finally, working with the Hampton Roads Workforce Council on the Regional Maritime Training System. So this is the #1 maritime industrial base in the country. And so this is focused on creating additional employees for the maritime industrial economy. And so hopefully you've received an invitation to this. If not, we will make sure it's in your inbox, but we would love for you all to be there on October 29th, where we will officially launch this playbook, actually hand it out, and then also have a panel of experts to talk about sort of how we got here. And so it will be Admiral Rock, we'll have Bill Murray from Dominion, we will have the NASA Langley Acting Executive Director, and then Stephen Edwards from the Port of Virginia. And finally, I'd just like to conclude with talking about what is a very long name with a terrible acronym, but it's a very impactful organization, EVRIFA, Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facility Authority. And I think it's a bit of a misnomer because as Chair Ramsey and I talk about a lot, you do not have to do industrial projects with an EVRIFA. And so this is really a collaborative effort between communities. So it's regionalism in action. 2 communities or more can jointly co-invest in a project and then share in the revenues associated with those wins. And so I think a lot of people think of it as an industrial space, but it could be an infrastructure project. It could be affordable housing. It could be a tourism-related asset. And so the rules and regulations around a RIFA are fairly loose, and so I think we, as actually the largest RIFA in the state, there's 12 others, have an opportunity, I think, to set the bar here. So as you can see, currently, we have these 12 members, and our project is the Kings Creek Commerce Center in neighboring York County, and the RIFA was really born here in the Historic Triangle, a collaboration between you all, York County, and James City County, that then expanded to the rest of the peninsula and now is including most of the south side. And the Kings Creek Commerce Center was state surplus land that was a former Navy fuel depot. And so most of it has been leased to Dominion for a solar farm, but we have about 183 acres left that we are really recruiting manufacturing and distribution locations. And so we've had quite a bit of interest and are hopeful to have a deal here in the near future. And so then that leads us to sort of what is the next project. And I spoke to Isle of Wight last week, and we're discussing with them. They have a variety of sites that could potentially go into the EVRIFA, but we're really looking to all of the members to get creative and to think about sort of what can EVRIFA help you sort of get across the finish line. And so finally, just sort of looking at those various things and where Williamsburg can play a leading role. I think if you look at defense, energy, aerospace, and logistics, William & Mary can play such a critical role in providing workforce, providing research support. So our CEO is actually in London right now at a defense conference, and William & Mary sent him a list of all their connections to the UK, and it was a very, very long list, as I'm sure you can imagine. And so the hope is that we can sort of tie some of those things in and use those to create economic development opportunities. And the whole of Government Center of Excellence, I think, is the key to that. And then the School of Computing, Data Science, and Physics, as we see AI and things continue to accelerate, this is going to play a critical role. And it plays a critical role in creating a workforce. We work with Yuri and her team very closely and are very familiar with Launchpad and are connecting that in to these sort of innovation ecosystems to the extent that we can. And then with you all sort of serving in the leadership role of EVRIFA, I think that the time is right for that organization really to be extremely impactful. And so we're really grateful for your leadership on that board. This is something that the Alliance took over as the managing entity about 3 years ago. It's something that fit right in with what we already do, and so we did that as sort of just an additional service to the communities that we serve. And so all of our real estate solutions are going through EV-RIFA, and that'll include doing things like applying for brownfields grants from the EPA, which then any one of the member communities could pull down and use EV-RIFA sort of as that header. So we're really excited about, I think, what the future holds led by this playbook, but would love to answer any questions or hear any feedback that you have on any of these things. And thank you again.
Well, Mr. Harrison, thank you for making the trek over to be with us today. You know, oftentimes, you know, we can look at ourselves very small in the world. You know, we can focus on potholes and noise and other issues. But the impact of the region and its you know, connectivity to federal spending and job creation, I mean, it really is a big organization that the city of Williamsburg, I think, I'm proud to say, is part of that as we participate in RIFA and the Alliance and TPO and TAC and so on and so forth. Because, you know, where the region goes, well, so goes Williamsburg, and I think being a part of that conversation is great. And when I think about all of that you just identified today, and thinking about logistics, how important it is that you and the Alliance and the RIFA are part of that, because partnerships don't always happen, and opportunity is often lost when you don't have that connectivity. And so the value that you all bring in those organizations, I think, is essential. You know, using as an example, you know, oftentimes we're at the tail end of product, but the research and all the planning that goes into it is something that it's an opportunity that we've missed. And again, to your observation, we have lots of higher ed here that does lots of research and produces lots of smart people. We ought to be creating industries that keep those folks here. So I applaud you and the effort that the organizations do to help bring some logistics to that so that we can be more successful as a region, and then obviously more successful here in Williamsburg. So I don't have any questions, but thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And I'll just add, I think, you know, where the region goes, so goes Williamsburg, but where Williamsburg goes, so goes the region. I think, you know, Hampton Roads is a name that people are not familiar with when you get out of this area. Ms. DeWitt and I have been various places during her career too, and people say, what is Hampton Roads? And you usually have to say, well, you've heard of Williamsburg, right. You've heard of William and Mary. And so that is the internationally known name. And so I think that you all serve in a leadership role because of that, and it really does sort of help. It's a good housekeeping seal of approval when you have an R1 research university and an internationally known name in the region.
Can we charge a tax for using our name?
I think you should. You might as well, yeah.
I get a royalty from that, yeah. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison, for being here. It's great information and updating for City Council. I know it's kind of a reminder to the mayor's point. We're often focused on the local things that are happening and forget what's happening with the Alliance and EV-RIFA. With that being said, also kind of touching on the mayor's point is because we're familiar with it, if the community's watching and they're not familiar with Hampton Roads Alliance and EV-RIFA, there's a lot of information in your presentation. How would you narrow that down to what's the core advantage for Williamsburg being a part of these organizations?
That's a great question. And I will say, too, that we have HamptonRoadsAlliance.com has all this information on it. And so anyone that's interested, you can also go to EasternVirginiaAuthority.com for any of the EV-RIFA information. But I would really say it's the workforce. It's the connections to William and Mary, and the fact that you're churning out people at an R1 research institution, and so many people have a connection to Williamsburg that it really, it's that collegiality of understanding where you're from. Most people have been here, have heard of it, and so it sort of gives us a foot in the door for any of these conversations. And I think even, you know, as we've worked with Bruce Katz, who's from Drexel, but his connections often were requesting to talk to people at William and Mary. And so like with Kay Floyd, which I hadn't even been that familiar myself with, the Whole of Government Center of Excellence and what that can do. And so moving a lot of that from DC down here to Williamsburg, as they're doing, to put in the Gates Hall, I think so much of that is going to attract industry around it. Defense, there's a clarion call, I think, for defense, and so I think you need highly skilled, highly educated people to sort of meet this moment, and those people live and work in and around this area. We've seen a huge amount of interest in the historic triangle in particular, and some have been large industrial projects which would maybe go in James City and York, but a lot of them have an R&D component that I think could go in Williamsburg.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I've really enjoyed the presentation, and I actually don't have any questions. I think the mayor and vice mayor I've learned a lot even through their talking and questions as well. So just want to say thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. As you've said, being on EV-RFA board since it began, I'm more familiar than probably anyone else, but I still learn new opportunities. And I think for me, one of the things you brought out was looking at the beginning of the supply chain as opposed to the end of it. And I see that as perhaps an opportunity for Williamsburg in combination with the new school, the whole of government, both of which have really long names, as does EV-RFA, need to come up with better acronyms. But I think once the School of Computing, Data Science, and Physics gets, stood up really and starts graduating and has interns that are looking for job opportunities, that we could become an area with a couple sites that might encourage that and create additional job opportunities. And as we know, we are in the middle of the mega region on the, what do we call ourselves, the Innovation Tech Corridor, I believe.
Right, exactly.
So we're in a good spot for that. Just a couple things. So when we talked about EV-RFA, and we've talked about the name industrial, and we as a group have talked about, well, can't we change that name? And I think it's important to know that we can't change it, correct?
Correct. It's in state code that it has to be called a Regional Industrial Facility Authority. So we've talked with Steve Mead, who's the EV-RFA attorney, about that, and I think we potentially could petition the state at some point, because I think it would be helpful. In the sort of interim, we've just changed the logo so that Regional Industrial Facility is very small and in yellow, so it's a little harder to read, and so to make it look like it's Eastern Virginia Authority. But I do think it, if you know the vast amount of things it can do, it makes it a lot more interesting, I think, to community members.
And I think as additional examples are available, both through us, hopefully, and across the state, that'll be better known. And I know that we've talked, too, about, just trying to make it very simplistic, that to have an EV-RFA project, you need a project, you need someone who has some money willing to invest, or more people willing to invest in a site. And so it's not overly complicated from that aspect. It's just trying to find the pieces that fit together. And as you mentioned too, it could be hospitality, it could be housing, it could be commercial development. There are lots of opportunities out there. So hopefully we'll come up with another project before my tour term is over. But thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Harrison, for the information. And as Vice Mayor Dent alluded to, setting some perspective, it's easy to just think of Williamsburg on a local level, but also you provided a bit more perspective regionally and also nationally on how we can stand out in certain ways. So thank you for the information. I had one question, just more of a curiosity question. You talked a little bit about the economic playbook and the strategic projects housed within that. I believe it goes with the DEAL acronym.
Right.
I wanted to see, out of curiosity, are there any other projects that maybe fall outside of the acronyms realm that the playbook is looking to pursue in the future?
So we are, and the playbook itself is going to have a section that sort of talks about additional considerations. So we've found this to sort of be the core of the local economy, but there are also many other facets that we could and should look at, but we felt that the Alliance was probably not the right sort of central facilitator. And so one would be tourism, one would be affordable housing, things like that, where that's not sort of the crux of what we at the Alliance do, but we are going to address those, healthcare being another. And say that, we would love to sort of take this playbook and take this structure and give it to another regional entity or another community in Hampton Roads that would like to sort of create a project within the playbook confines. There'll be a committee stood up sort of each of these projects as well. And so we're sort of creating a structure that you could build out beyond the DEAL acronym, but then the Alliance will sort of mostly play within that realm.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like there's a lot that the Alliance is working on. Shifting gears a little bit, with the federal changes occurring, have you all seen any noticeable differences with unemployment in the region?
So not to date. I think it's really been a collective sort of group of regional leaders have talked about this and get on calls almost weekly, semi-weekly now, looking at some of the executive orders that come down and looking for opportunities and potential sort of areas that we need to advise local leaders about. And so one of the major opportunities that we've seen is that there's a huge emphasis on shipbuilding that this administration is looking at. And so I think shipbuilding should be done in and around Hampton Roads, given that we are the builder of nuclear aircraft carriers. And so we are working really closely with state delegates, congressional delegates. We get on the phone regularly with the congressional delegation and just sort of talk about a lot of the things in this presentation, the crux of who and what Hampton Roads is, and ensuring that the things that are here and that $13 billion in federal investment stays here.
Well, thank you for all the work that you all do.
Absolutely, our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming in. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, it leads us now to council communications. Does anybody have anything they'd like to offer? Okay, seeing none, on the agenda, you will see a schedule of meetings through October 7th. Those are presented for your awareness and hopefully some participation to the public. I'll go now to open forum. If anybody in the audience would like to come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the open forum, and I believe, Mr. Vice Mayor, we have closed session.
We do. I move to go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing two legal matters per subparagraph 8 for the purpose of consultation on specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel concerning a contract and boards and commissions, the discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, and the discussion of the terms or scope of such contract where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body per subparagraph 29 regarding schools, and the discussion of a special award pursuant to subparagraph 11.
Second.
Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Hi.
Okay, so we'll go into closed session, and once that's concluded, we'll come back out for the certification of
I move to approve the certification of a closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia.
Second.
Dusty?
Ms. Williams? Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kern Shear?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Dusty?
Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kern Shear?
Aye.
We're adjourned.